So, what is Project 2025 exactly? Let's get right to it. Alright, so boom. Project 2025 is a transition plan that conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, along with other right-wing organizations, put together as a roadmap for the next Republican president. It was originally published in 2023 and includes a nearly 1,000-page handbook that details a conservative agenda for the next president, with the critical part being the implementation of a personnel policy. The New Republic stated that Project 2025 is a remarkably detailed guide to turning the United States into a fascist paradise. The primary document of 2025, the Mandate for Leadership, looks to create what is essentially a Christian nationalist version of the United States, one in which same race, married heterosexuality is the only valid form of sexual expression and identity. All pregnancies will be carried to term, even if that requires death, and transgender and gender non-conforming people do not exist. It's crazy what America could look like. What probably the craziest part is the playbook for the first 180 days of a hypothetical Trump second term. It states the time is short and conservatives need a plan. The project will create a plan of actions to be taken in the first 180 days of the new administration to bring quick relief to Americans suffering from the left's devastating policies. Among the many absolutely crazy suggestions that it offers is to remake the federal workforce into a political weapon of the president. Instead of nonpartisan civil servants implementing policies on everything from health to climate and education, the executive branch will be filled with, in this case, Trump loyalists. It states that it is necessary to ensure that departments and agencies have robust cadres of political staff. That means that nearly every decision that federal agencies make could and would further a political agenda. They would have the power to cut spending to any programs that lean Democratic or that they don't like. Almost all federal jobs will become political appointments. In the intro, it states, our goal is to assemble an army of aligned, vetted, trained, and prepared conservatives to go to work on day one and deconstruct the administrative state. We need both a governing agenda and the right people in place. The playbook detailed a top-to-bottom overhaul of the Department of Justice and putting an end to the FBI's effort to curb misinformation. The handbook says that the FBI have absolutely no business policing speech. It will cut the education department and make extensive changes to public schooling, cutting long-time low-income and early education federal programs like Head Start, and even the entire Department of Education. The plan states that federal education policy should be limited, and ultimately, the federal Department of Education should be eliminated. Project 2025 will require all public school students to take a military entrance exam because they don't send their kids to public school, with no such requirements being made for private schools. Just saying. The agenda also included a crackdown on abortion pills. The playbook urged the Food and Drug Administration to reverse the approval of the pills, claiming that the approval was politicized and illegal. Now, it doesn't technically call for a national abortion ban, but abortion is one of the most discussed topics in the plan, with proposals throughout it encouraging the next president to lead the nation in restoring the culture of life in America again. It would do so by prosecuting anyone mailing abortion pills, quoting, abortion pills pose the single greatest threat to unborn children in a post-Roe world, Roe versus Wade. The plan will criminalize those who provide abortion care by using the government to track miscarriages, stillbirths, and abortions, and make it harder to get emergency contraceptive care covered by insurance. It would also end federal government protections for members of the military and their families to get abortion care. Project 2025 would also make corn illegal. And when I say corn, think of Cornhub and OnlyFans. Got it? Cool. Now you might be thinking, oh well, that doesn't really bother me. But think of this. Sending a racy picture to your boyfriend or girlfriend would then be an act punishable by law, subject to fines, jail time, and a criminal record. The Associated Press called the handbook's language apocalyptic. The handbook encouraged the next presidential administration to examine the balance between media demands and space constraints on the White House premises, saying that there is no legal entitlement for the press corps to have permanent space on the premises. Many have labeled Project 2025 as authoritarian. The project relies on what legal scholars call the unitary executive theory, which dismisses the idea that there are three separate branches of government for checks and balances. It would give Trump or any conservative president the power to investigate his opponents. Project 2025 would move the Justice Department and all of its law enforcement arms, like the FBI, directly under presidential control. It calls for a top-to-bottom overhaul of the FBI and for the administration to go over all of its investigations with a fine-tooth comb, destroying any that the president doesn't like. This would kill the independence of federal law enforcement agencies. Project 2025 would use public taxpayer money for private and/or religious schools. It would teach Christian religious beliefs in public schools and end free and discounted school lunch programs. It would ban books that talk about slavery and the mistreatment of Native Americans, ending civil rights and DEI protections in government. The playbook calls for a complete removal of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the workforce. Project 2025 also proposes an amendment to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, the legislation that protects against discrimination based on a set of protected classes. This includes race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, suggesting that the collection of EEO-1 data like race should be prohibited. Without collecting demographic data about employees, organizations will not be able to recognize disparities like hiring and promotion rates. What gets measured gets improved. And without adequate data collection, systemic inequalities in the workplace will thrive. It also looks to eliminate worker protections. Labor unions fight for decent wages, affordable health care, job security, safe and respectful workplaces, fair scheduling, and things of that nature. Research from the Economic Policy Institute says unions are associated with higher wages, less income inequality, smaller wage gaps, and improved health and safety, among other benefits. Project 2025 wants to dismantle workers' rights to unions and proposes that employees instead be provided a less powerful alternative called employee involvement organizations. Though not included in the mandate for leadership, the writers have made several suggestions for military vets. First, would eliminate the simultaneous receipt of both retirement pay and disability compensation. The second will completely remove VA enrollment for veterans who have no compensable service-related disabilities. A third policy change would exclude 7 conditions from disability compensation, with the U.S. General Accounting Office determining they are not likely caused or made worse by military service, things like multiple sclerosis and Crohn's disease. The fourth recommends implementing a 10-year time limit on initial disability applications. There is currently no limit on how long after retiring a military vet can apply for disability. Project 2025 calls for a ban on African American and gender studies in all levels of education, an end to climate regulation, deregulation of big business and the oil industry to promote and expedite capital punishment. It calls for the use of military to break up domestic protests. This will unconstitutionally put an end to the right to public assembly and allow the president to use the military as a weapon against the American people. It calls for the mass deportation of immigrants and incarceration in camps, and to end the right of citizenship for the dreamers, those who were brought here from other countries as babies and children and were protected under law. It would ban Muslims from entering the country. It would eliminate important federal agencies like the EPA, the FDA, and the NOA. Doing so would eliminate guidelines, which would mean no rules to follow and no consequences for harmful behavior. The plan would make it easier to pack not only the Supreme Court, but lower courts as well, with right-wing judges. This would change the rule of law in America for at least 40 years, and possibly forever. It would give additional tax breaks to the corporations and the 1%, and imposing higher taxes on the working class. It will raise the retirement age to 70, privatize Social Security, and cut Medicare as we know it, pushing seniors onto privately run Medicare Advantage plans instead of traditional Medicare. It will undo prescription drug reform included in the Inflation Reduction Act. This will greatly raise prescription drug prices. It would also end the Affordable Care Act, severing some of the most at-risk people from access to healthcare. There's actually more, and I could go into greater detail, but I think this is a pretty good overview to at least bring you up to speed. This is Project 2025 in a nutshell, and I'll leave you with the words of the great poet, Carlton Douglas Rittenhour. Fight the power. We got to fight the powers that be.